Hey there, Tallahassee. Jay Revel here. Welcome to another edition of the Greater Tallahassee Chamber of Commerce podcast. We are thrilled to have you with us today, listening in. We've got another exciting guest. Every time we sit down for one of these, we go through show notes in the beginning to think about topics, and there's always something that I find, wow, this could be something really interesting for our listeners to dive into and consider how it can impact not only their chamber experience, but hopefully their business. And we've got one of those guests with us today, folks. As always, I've got Sarah Solomon here with us, manning the microphones and the headphones and punching the keys and making it all work. Sarah, how we doing?
Great. Hello, everyone.
Wonderful, wonderful. And over on the other side of the table, or other side of the microphones here, we've got our guest today, Bennett Napier. Bennett is the president and CEO of Partners and Association Management here in Tallahassee. I'm going to let him tell you a little bit more about their company, because it's one that when you think about our community, one of the things that's sort of a popular thing you see around, especially in the downtown area, a lot of statewide associations. He's got a fascinating company that really delves into that world quite a bit that you might not have, maybe you haven't heard of, because a lot of times they're putting the organizations they service front and center. But Bennett is also on our board of directors here for the Greater Tallahassee Chamber of Commerce. He chairs our membership committee. He's all in, as we like to say, and he's a great person and someone that you should know more about here in our community. Bennett, welcome to the show.
Great. I appreciate it, Jay and Sarah. It's a pleasure to be here. And, I guess this will be my 15 minutes of fame, or 25 if we last that long. But I appreciate, obviously, the service of the podcast since you've launched them. And you guys are a great tag team, and how you approach the process with the questions you ask and the diversity of guests that you have. So honored to be here, and appreciated to share a little bit and talk about the chamber first and foremost as we go through this discussion. So thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for being with us. And, it really is for us. This is another method of discovering more about our members and leaders in the community and the companies that make our economy thrive. So really, we probably get more out of it than our guests do, and this I'm sure will be another instance of that. But let's kind of jump right into your company, Bennett, and maybe your story in Tallahassee and how it all came to be, and how you came to serve in the role there. When people, maybe if they come by, if they aren't familiar with the company, what do you do at Partners and Association Management?
Yeah, it's a constant struggle. So everybody that works with us, or anybody in association management, always has that issue of how to define what we do, and ours is even harder since we work with more than one association. So, my mom always thinks, well, you just travel and fly off to meetings and work registration desk, and that part of that's true. But I've kind of changed to some extent how we explain what we do, and kind of an analogy that we're starting to use now is we're a quasi like staff leasing for associations. So, association for whatever reason, doesn't want to have their own building and have W-2 employees. They can contract with a firm like ours, and effectively it provides economies of scale for all associations. We have pretty wide range of associations in terms of professions and industries we work with, and state, regional, and national in scope. But effectively, we service their headquarters, and so they contract basically a turnkey solution with us through a management agreement where somebody on our staff within our company is CEO of XYZ Association, and then everybody else from a functional standpoint, event planning, membership recruitment, retention, financial management, all the things that the chamber staff work on from a chamber standpoint, we're doing it. We just do it for more than one group, and it's a pretty cool, in terms of business model, just in the sense of the variety. No day is certainly there's no day that's not busy, and there's always recurring things, as all nonprofits have. Most of the groups we work with are 501c6s, but we do have some 501c3s as well. More on the foundation as opposed to a charitable type mission, but it's neat for our staff just because you can do a lot in the sense of especially job roles, especially at what I call the program level. within our team, can have somebody who wants to do 50% meeting planning and 50% marketing communications, or somebody really loves meeting planning and do it 40 hours a week. Somebody wants a little dabble in social media, they can do that. And then on the flip side, they can be doing advertising sales for print and digital publication. So it's a pretty cool just from that standpoint. We have the ability to, hopefully, if we can, get people in the right seats on the bus based on their skill sets and their passion in terms of their roles. And then certainly just working with the volunteer leaders as we do within the chamber environment. It's really neat to see just so many people from a volunteer management standpoint get involved in meeting the missions of their organizations, and we're able to help partner with them to deliver and execute on those strategic plans that they have. So,
we know from working with you from the chamber point of view that you're very knowledgeable in association management. Can you take us through your history? How did you get into this field of work?
Sure. I mean, everybody asks me, did I go here for school? And the answer is yes, but it was not in the process that most people think. So, I was in graduate school in Atlanta and had friends from undergrad at UNC Charlotte, where I went to undergrad, that were getting graduate degree in sociology. So I had friends, and I'd never been to Tallahassee before. This was the early 1990s, but believe it or not, I grew up in North Carolina, and my grandmother was a huge college football fan. So obviously those were the glory days, if you will, or the beginning of them for FSU. And so when and if FSU was on TV at these wild away games, beating up all the top teams, my grandmother, we watched every FSU game when I was growing up in North Carolina that we could. And so I'd never been to Tallahassee before, and then ended up visiting friends, and then ended up staying at a job offer with Harris Management Group, which was an association management company at the time. Bob Harris had founded that in 1979, and he interviewed me. I had worked at a similar foundation in D.C., and once he saw that, he hired me on the spot. So I had no intention to move to Tallahassee, and just had the opportunity to move here, and did, and never left. And as Bob transitioned more into a consulting type of role, after having owned a company for a long time, I had the opportunity to open my own, and that was in 1997. And started out with myself working out of my house, and a basset hound at my feet, and then was able to get out of the house and grow it from just one initial association, which we still have, and now we've got 22 full service associations or nonprofits that we manage. Yeah,
that's very cool. And maybe just kind of provide a little bit of that. An idea to our listeners of what kind of associations. Could you paint a couple of industries or specific? Because I'm sure the variety that y'all deal with every day.
We haven't completed the full circle, meaning birth to death. But we've got the death part, because we represent the Florida Funeral Directors and Cemetery Cremation Association, but we've got everything from healthcare and dentistry and health information management to fire protection, water well drillers. It's a wide mix. Architecture. It's pretty neat. I mean, our specialty is trade associations, just because generally speaking, the board members are business owners themselves, so they understand profit and loss. They understand what our costs of doing business are, and so our conversations are business focused. In that sense, because that's the world that they live in day to day. So that is our specialty. We don't bid on a lot of business, in the sense that we got a lot of knocks at the door, but we try to find the right match for us. So we could have grown a lot bigger over the years, but we've chosen to kind of be small in the sense that we want to do good work for who we work with and enjoy who we work with, and that has worked in the sense that it's helped with not only employee retention, just because they're not pulling their hair on fire, if you will. But also just in the sense of very little client turnover, if you will, compared to our marketplace nationally, and so that approach has helped us have real long-term relationships, and very profitable relationships, but also fruitful. Just meaning we really enjoy the people we work with, and when you do that, all the cylinders are clicking, if you will. We can really take people from where they were and get them to where they want to go, and that's been a good journey for us. What's
your reach? I know you've said you've done local, national. I know because I work with you on the board of directors that you travel a lot and go on a lot of trips. Kind of paint the picture for us of how far you kind of reach. And then also on the second side of that question, tell us why Tallahassee works for you in this business.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say just on the scope of our client base, if you will, it's about 55% now are national organizations in the sense that they're either national trade associations, and then we have several national, what I call standalone certification programs. An example is National Home Inspector Examination, which is a home inspector certification standard that's recognized in over 37 states. And so, the scope of it, for the most part, is national. We have, because we're in Tallahassee, we obviously have our fair share of Florida state associations, which is where we started, was our bread and butter when we started. And so in terms of, our reach, if you will, if you come into our office every week, people will say, well, how many people work here? And they'll look around and they're like, nobody's here. Well, I mean, we've got weeks where we've got 15, 18 people, all over the country, and several times a year, there's weeks where we have 3 or 4 meetings going on at one time. So, a couple of weeks ago, we had one annual meeting in Hershey, Pennsylvania, one annual meeting in Charleston, one in Arizona, and another one down in Miami, all in 1 week. So we had what we call client management teams all on site, basically, like you'd find at the chamber conference. That's basically what we're doing. We're just doing it in, multiple cities. We obviously do a lot in Florida, certainly Orlando primarily. We do obviously have capital fly-ins to Tallahassee as well. So we are bringing in board members for the state associations, certainly into town at least once a year, if not more. And so, people who like to fly, this is probably a good place to work. We have some people, believe it or not, hate to fly, so they're only working on our state associations because, they can get on I-75 or I-10 and go south. But, as far as just, why we're here and why has this worked, I continue to share this because I think it's cool, and I'm not, the originator of the data point. Bob Harris, who still works here and lives here, started this actually way back in the 90s with the chamber discussions. But so Tallahassee, believe it or not, has the third highest concentration of associations in the country, behind D.C. and Chicago.
Wow.
And it's not, and I think if we look at the shingles around town, it's not all Florida associations. I mean, that's the majority, but there is a mix, and obviously, Florida itself's got a mix too with Latin America and that connection and stuff like that. But for us, it's one is we have a ready-made workforce in that skill set. Certainly people who are already in the field who have established skills, but we've got 3 major educational institutions here. We can bring in new talent coming out of school, especially out of like hospitality management at FSU is a good example, that we've drawn some people out of over the years. And certainly the vendor base, if you will, our strategic partners, graphic designers, printers, public relations firms, all those other things that we need from a functional standpoint to augment what we're doing. We've got really strong quality people to work with here from that standpoint. So there's no reason to go somewhere else. I mean, it's all right here if you're looking. And although I fly a lot myself, I'll do a little shout out to Karen Moore because she and I were on a plane last week. I thought I fly a lot, and she's double diamond status on Delta each year, and I'm diamond status, which is a lot, but she's double diamond, so I know what that means. So in a sense of appreciating Tallahassee, I get my big city fix a lot, but when I come back to town, you really do appreciate okay, I can get to work in 15 minutes, and I'm not sitting in traffic 4 hours a day, and hating life. We can get around town, and we've got great culture here. Certainly natural, amenities, and it's just a friendly atmosphere, So, you can't put a price on that. And I think people who travel out of town, when we come back, we recognize what we really have here.
So you and Karen can get together and do the airport food podcast.
Yes.
Where to eat,
where to eat, what not to eat. Yeah, don't eat airport sushi.
Yeah.
Although there are some good airport sushi around the country.
Let me know where those are. That's fascinating. Yeah, one of the things that I'm curious of, Bennett, is within the association world, the whole world is changing so rapidly these days. I mean, the way in which we communicate, the way in which we meet, and experience time with each other. What are some of the big trends that you're seeing out there? I mean, what's kind of the cutting edge of the association business these days that's mixing things up?
Sure. I mean, I appreciate it. I mean, obviously, the chamber itself is a non-for-profit, membership-based organization. Its chambers by nature are unique, but it's just in a broader sense, it's the association management profession, if you will, and I would maybe say some complimentary things, if you will, about the chamber, just in terms of the hot buttons for what I call traditional associations is, we look around the boardroom and it's a lot of all white guys, just using that term because that's factual. That's the reality of a lot of associations, and in many cases that's their membership base. And people looking around the room and they're looking at say, okay, what do we look like for the next 5 to 10 years? Who's coming behind us, and how do we bring those people in? And something I think the chamber's done a phenomenal job, for years, and it's not new. Is just I look at our board in terms of the types of people are on the board who are engaged in committees. You've got programs like Access Tallahassee. You've got the YP program. All these things that the chamber's been talking this talk and walking this walk for a long time, and a lot of other associations around the country, regardless of their size and business model, are really struggling to achieve a lot of what the chamber's already reached. And so, I think that's probably something we could sell. How did we do it, and how did we get there? Something to be proud of. I'm serious. It's just those are the hot buttons that people are literally looking and saying, are we going to be here in 10 years? Because we don't see anybody coming behind us, from a diversity standpoint, whether it's ethnicity or age or all of the above. And so I think those are, from a strategic standpoint, a lot of associations are focused on that. And chamber really doesn't have that kind of issue. We're talking about we have plenty of business and work to do, but that's not one of them. And I think that's probably one of our biggest strengths. And I think it's important to share that, because I think it's probably lost on a lot of us that may not do organizational management for a living. That we have a lot to be proud of, and we didn't get here overnight, and it's something to relish.
Those kind words about our chamber are certainly appreciated, but I think it's important to note that the chamber, gets there partially in part to our board members, which you are a board member, have been for a couple years, and also you are entering your second term as the chair of our membership committee. Could you kind of paint the picture for our listeners out there of the kind of work and the scope that the membership committee has kind of accomplished in the last year and is kind of working towards this year?
Sure. I mean, it's obviously the chamber, like most, would have a membership committee, and so the committee in itself is not new in theory, but so I was pleased to take the helm from Jeremy Cohen, Target Print and Mail, who chaired it before me. He's one of our, like I mentioned earlier, one of our strategic partners. We do a lot of work with him as based, on association, publications, things like that. But when Sue and Jay and others asked me to take over from Jeremy, kind of look at a different twist in terms of focus. So we're not, we still talk about recruitment and retention and so what those things look like and how to, get high marks on both of those metrics, if you will. But it's also, I think, what we transition, and I've been really pleased with, committee volunteers we've had, almost all of which have committed to another couple years of this journey, if you will, of, really taking the what I was talking about earlier. The chamber's got a huge diversity in terms of our membership, and which is a great thing, and really trying to hone down on getting engagement at all levels. We have obviously tiers of membership, and based on those tiers, people are by nature going to be highly engaged because they're for different reasons, but we've got the majority of our members are smaller businesses, we're a small business town, and really trying to give avenues if and this is outside of what I call an event engagement, because we've got tons of events that the chamber offers, as we all know. It's more about, how can they, beyond committees, beyond the leads groups, if you will, although those are great programs will continue, is, the chamber has done such a great job at every turn, I think, over the last few years on, major public policy issues. We've got a BAC committee, obviously, but taking at the grassroots level, how do we get our chamber members engaged at whatever level they want to get engaged, whether it's writing letters to the editor, or doing I'd say testimony at whatever government agency meeting, local commission or city commission meeting, of topics of importance where they're just quote unquote a regular chamber member. They're not necessarily on the board, they're not a committee member, but they're an engaged, passionate member, and they believe in our mission. And our focus is to try to find the avenues that works for them. And so the next several months we'll be serving our membership a lot more, really just to get in congruence with what are their passion areas, and let's align their passions with all the pathways the chamber has available. And so I think that's a good focus. We've gotten some good feedback last year with an example we launched in coordination with the BAC, where we did a town hall forum. I'm assuming we'll do some things of that nature in the future. So those are all like kind of new endeavors. Not all of them have to result in an event, but our goal is just to everywhere we can, provide a mechanism and a vehicle for chamber members to be engaged at whatever level they want to be engaged. And they win, we win, and that's been really neat to see that. I mean, the leads groups is another good example. Although the leads groups have been very successful for a lot over the course of the history for the chamber. All programs go through these cycles where you're like, okay, how do we reevaluate this? Are the things we're doing well? What are we not doing well? And so we kind of took a outside looking in, if you will, to the leads groups and gave some constructive feedback for that program, and most of which got adopted. And now as a result of that, which I think will have some long-term implications, positive in nature for the chamber, is spring of next year we'll have these tutorials that is being delivered by one of our members on the committee, Sue Evers, which is her skill set, is these instructional modules, if you will, of how to best make a leads group work for you. And so that's specific to the leads groups as one program, but the principles behind the networking, complete umbrella that the chamber offers, how people can maximize their experience. So it's just these, some small wins and some big wins that are coming that are kind of neat to see some of these deliverables, and all with the intent to remind people how valuable the chamber is, and provide them the way to get engaged in the manner they want.
It's sort of a anti-fortification strategy, right? It's the antithesis of that, right? I mean, you're trying to secure a space or fortify something, trying to reduce entry points, right? We have to be the opposite of that. Organizations moving forward in the world today, you have to create many entry points, give people an opportunity to engage. No matter what level you're at, you want to be able to feel like there's a door that you can walk through with relative ease to find value. And I do think the organization has come a long way. Our organization has a lot of really good things that I can point to as someone who was a member on the board and then got corralled into working here, right? But there are a lot of very impressive things on that front. I've always felt like no matter what level membership you're at or what experience with membership you have, there are opportunities for you to kind of come walking right in and be part of the greater collective. And I know you in the membership committee has really paid a lot of attention to that lately, and I think that in the last few years we've seen some really good changes where people can just feel like they're going to find value no matter where they step in our direction, and that's kudos to that. I mean, you, Jeremy, the others that have worked on that, I think it's very important. If you were going to kind of look at that experience within membership committee and try to say, hey, this is one thing that maybe is a bit of a moonshot down the road. Hey, if we could really just do this one thing, what would that be?
Yeah, it does cross over to the the Business Advisory Council, which is obviously focused primarily on public policy issues. But at the end of the day, this is a member-based organization, and we need our members at every level engaged in the conversation. And we have a lot of people that are. But with 1,400 members, we obviously don't have 1,400 members sitting on the BAC, but they probably all have, some thoughts of what we're doing and how we're doing it. And so, I think, pie in the sky is, when and if we need to register in on, policy issues beyond staff, like yourself, Jay, and your role, and Sue, and the BAC members who do a phenomenal job, that, again, going back to the grassroots regular member, these are our members. And, just because it may be Jay and Sue that we see at the podium, at commission meetings, you're speaking on behalf of all those 1,400 members. Our goal is to say, can we get another 100? Can we get another 200 in the room? Not all of them have to testify, but to show, our members are behind us. They believe in what we're doing, and that's why we're doing it in the first place. And so I think that's, it may sound a little, idealistic, but I think, we have the members for a reason. We have very high retention, generally speaking, compared to a lot of chambers. And I think that tells us a lot, that we are doing the right things for our members in terms of what they want, and that we want them to help continue to broaden that story at the public policy level.
All right, so I'll do a follow-up on that point. We were in executive committee a couple of hours ago. We were going through some things, and Corey Melton, Vice President of Membership. Shout out to Corey and the membership team. Herb Tequila doing a great job. We all are the membership team in various ways, but they're on those front lines quite often. Corey was pointing out that we do have an 87% retention rate among our members year over year, which if you look nationally, that's pretty far up there.
Yep.
In your experience in the association space and working with our chamber, why do you think it is that we have such a high retention rate?
Yeah, I mean, you can take I guess I would say this. I mean, based on survey data that we collect, in the committee reviews, staff reviews at the chamber level, I think there's continued focus on, programs and services that deliver high value. And I think, over the years, the chamber has, just as, we listen. And, when we get data, and whether it's anecdotal data or scientific data, if you will, from survey responses, we act on it. And so I think people see, one, we're listening, and two, we take action. Doesn't mean we're going to agree on everything. But I think generally speaking, we try to provide value at every level we can within our mission. And, I think if we just literally, we would run out of room putting up stuff on a wall, like how many of the things that, been new developments, small projects, big projects, if you will, that have come from, one member's idea.
Yeah.
And then, those ideas get heard and vetted out, sometimes implemented. And, so I think, that's a big deal. But the other piece is that I think just generally speaking, as we've, looked at the data over the last few years, just people look, there's multiple touch points of membership, that provide value. And it doesn't mean every one of those has high value for every member. But my point is, it seems to us, based on the retention rates and the data we look at, is, there's at least one aspect of high value for every member we have. And it only takes one, and so I think that's a good testament to what we're trying to do here. And I think, obviously, going back to your question of, what would we like to see? Pie in the sky, like to see 2,800 members. That's the next destination. So the more we get our membership to rally around who we are and what we're about, because they're drinking the Kool-Aid, if you will. Let's tell others. This chamber is big enough. There are no walls. The door's open, and there need to be a lot more businesses that belong to the chamber.
Kind of rounding out the conversation, this is a question that I love to ask because I love to hear the variety of answers. But going back to kind of your life with partners in association management, is there anything that you wish the average Tallahassee citizen knew more about the line of work that you do? Yeah,
it's it's a good question. Just in terms of line of work, I'll say this, and this will be my one, quote unquote political statement, I guess, if you will. Associations, chambers for that matter, we're all special interest, quote unquote. I think, special interests get a bad name just based on certain actions or certain people's actions. But I always go back to, the Constitution, which obviously we all have to reference. But, we all have the right to advocate on our own behalf and rally around a mission of like-minded group people or businesses for that matter. And so I think, I look at it, just in the sense of, I'll give you an example. So I was in D.C. a couple weeks ago at the American Society of Association Executives. And so every year they have a program called The Power of A. And so any association, of any shape and size can, get recognized for that. But it comes down to the issue of associations, and chambers included, because you're a poster child for this, what I'm about to say, deliver the most amount of adult continuing education in the country compared to any other sector, just by nature of what we do. And so, when you think about that in theory, what are the outcomes of that? Well, depending on if it's an industry, you're setting industry standards. If you're a profession, you're setting professional standards, scope of practice, the practice standards, those kind of things. And so, I try to bring it back to, take the lobbying aspect, which obviously a lot of groups have that component, but go back to, society benefits from, people rallying around a mission and working together on collaboratively to get there. And so associations are no different from that. Chambers are no different from that. And so I think try to make sure people understand the good of it. If they go to a medical office or a dentist's office, and talk about how did their practice standards get developed. That kind of bring it home to them. Make it personal. And so it's a long answer to your question, but I think associations do a lot of great work, or obviously wouldn't be doing it. And they do really change society. I think mostly for the better.
There's a little bit, thinking on those comments, Bennett, there's a little bit in the association world, right, of self-governance. People striving to hold each other to a higher set of ideals and accountability.
Right.
And it improves these industries as a whole, right?
Right.
And that also happens with our Chamber of Commerce. And what I think we see very often in meetings with businesses is our members looking around the room at each other and saying, we've got to make sure our community is held to a high standard. We want people, when they think of Tallahassee, to think of us in the best possible way. And that's why we're going to engage on this wide variety of issues, and we're going to, insist that when we do things here, we do it well, and that we're always constantly trying to figure out how to evolve and grow as a community. And I think based again sort of on your testimony here today, that's in keeping with how associations should and can be working, and I think that gives me a pretty good feeling about our members and the work that we do here. And we certainly appreciate the work you're doing for our organization and for our community, and for those who you impact around the state and nation with associations. I remember the first time I think I ever sat down, kind of learned a little bit about your organization. I was like, man, this is fascinating. I didn't know that this was even much of an industry in itself, but it is. And we appreciate you. We appreciate all the work you're doing, and again, thanks for being a member of the chamber, and thanks for helping us learn how we can do what we do better.
Yeah, we appreciate the opportunity to share and be with you and serve in a volunteer capacity for the chamber. We believe in what the chamber's doing, and it's it's been great for us. It's great for workforce development, all the programs that you offer. We've got several Leadership Tallahassee graduates, including myself, class 16. So that is the best class, because Sue Dick and Rick Moore were in that class. So I got in by the skin of my teeth, I guess. But on a serious note, just appreciate what you're doing. This podcast is great. Just again, grassroots, another way to reach the grassroots and be able to share ideas and hear from others. So thanks a lot.
You got it. Well, thanks again for being with us, Bennett. We appreciate it, folks. Bennett Napier, President, CEO, Partners Association Management. Real quick, Bennett, if folks want to learn more about your organization, where do we send them?
Someday I'm going to sell this website when we want to, retire. It's yoursearchisdone.com.
Nice.
There you go. That's pretty good. Google might be interested in that. Well, fabulous. Again, Bennett, we appreciate you being with us. Another great conversation, folks. We always try to bring you conversations with business leaders and community leaders who are really at the forefront of shaping the future of Tallahassee and all the great things that are happening here. Bennett is one of those. And folks, can't thank you enough just for listening. We appreciate you listening. If you're a member of the Greater Tallahassee Chamber of Commerce, we appreciate you and your membership. It does mean a lot to us. And as always, if you have an idea, something you'd like to hear, let us know. You can send us an email. You can give us a call. You can shoot us a tweet, whatever the easiest way for you to do that is. Again, the best way to find us is online at www.talchamber.com. That's talchamber.com, where you can find all of those great channels to communicate with your Chamber of Commerce fellow members, and of course our wonderful staff. I'm a little biased, but wonderful staff. So thanks again for listening, folks. Again, we appreciate you. Be sure, if you haven't already, to subscribe to the podcast. That way you never miss an episode, and go on to all of our social media channels and make sure to give us a like and a follow there. We are always trying to put out the most frequent amount of content that we can about our business community and where Tallahassee's heading, and we appreciate your feedback and following in that. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you again real soon.